So right now, which of the Nihon Ken are you breeding? Are you hunting? And could you tell the audience a little bit about the differences between them, their approximate physical makeup, and differences in use and personality?
Okay, so the Nihon Ken are one land race that came over here with the first people. And when they are split up into breeds, we split them into six breeds. There are some outliers that never made it into the actual Nihonken population, pedigreed population, and a lot of hunters in Japan still hunt with those. And we call them Jinu, which is like local dogs. And that's actually what a lot of the big game hunting here in Japan, the serious hunters, the most famous hunters, probably have a lot of these type of dogs. So they're based off of the Japanese breeds, but they're of unknown heritage, unknown parentage. What I have is I have the Shikoku and Kishu, these two medium-sized breeds that I hunt with. So out of the six breeds, we've got four medium-sized dogs, which are the Kishu, Shikoku, Kai, and Hokkaido. And then we have one large type, which is the Akita Inu that probably everyone is much more familiar with when they think of Japanese dogs. And then we got one small type, which is the Shiba Inu, which is probably the second most famous Japanese breed. So, other than size differences, most of all the Japanese breeds were named after the regions that they came from. So the Akita Inu is from the Akita area, and that was originally also a slightly larger than medium-sized hunting breed, and they hunted, bear and things like that up north. And this was actually they were originally called the Matagi Inu. These were the dogs that the Matagi hunters up in the Tohoku region, the northern part of Japan, hunted with. And now they're much more of a show breed. They went through a different phase in their history where they became a fighting breed for a while, and then now they're essentially a show breed. They're not working dogs anymore. They haven't been bred
Mm-hmm.
for that for well over 100 years. And the medium-sized breeds, there with the four of them, I would say they're roughly similar in structure. Think northern Spitz type breeds. You're talking what you mentioned earlier with the curled tails, the erect curled tail over the back, pricked ears, ears that are standing, with thick double coats to be able to withstand the elements. They're very natural kind of a dog. They come in a variety of different colors. We've got the what we call red here in Japan, but essentially you would call them a brown dog probably. And we've also got what we call sesame, which is kind of like a wolfy color, and that's predominant in the Shikoku. We have white dogs. The Kishu Ken is a predominantly white breed now. Probably about 80-90% of the dogs are white. And then we've also got, I guess, what you would call black and tan. And we've got that across most of the breeds. And we've also got brindle, which are, we call it toragia, which is like tiger stripes.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got these different colorations in the breeds. And with the four medium-sized ones, when I say a medium size, we're talking between, let's say, the females are coming up from around 14, 15 kilos. I'm not sure what that is in pounds, up to about males topping out at like 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I
I
think
know
that's
it's
about
2.2 pounds to a kilo.
like 35 pounds to 50 pounds, 35 to 50 pounds, something around that. So I think pretty
Probably
similar to
something
what
like
we'd
that.
consider a medium sized dog. A lot of the size that a lot of houndsmen are looking for and maybe not getting.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like a lot of hunters, I think that's kind of the sweet spot in weight is when you get that nice medium-sized dog that is easily manageable, and if worst comes to worst, you can carry that dog out of the mountain, rather than a large breed where you're going to be pretty gassed if your dog gets injured, you got to carry it out or something like that. It's easy to load up in the car, easy to own at the house. They're about border collie size, I would say, something around border collie size.
Yeah,
And
they
then as
they
far as
look like
the
they.
differences,
Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, I'm going to go off on a tangent. So yeah, you're saying they look
they,
like
they look like they move well and they hold up well in the mountains. They're just that perfect size. I guess the comparison that maybe some American hunters would know is they're a little bit like a Leica, a Siberian Leica, but I would say prettier. They're like the Japanese prettier version of the Siberian dog.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like I've had a lot of conversations with hunters that run Leica, and there's definitely a lot of similarity. I think the Leica are probably a bit more vocal than what we have in the Japanese breeds now,
Hmm.
um, and a tree better for sure. Japanese breeds haven't really been selected for treeing, so I've seen some Leica pretty impressive as far as their treeing goes. But yeah, very similar in type, and then a little bit more refined. And Leica probably run a little bit larger, a little bit leggier than the Japanese breeds. Yeah.
Hmm. But you don't have any sort of intentional tree game. You mentioned monkeys, which I definitely want to ask you about later. But most of what you're hunting doesn't tree.
Correct. We do have monkeys here in Japan, but they're generally they're not on our they're kind of protected here in Japan, so we're not usually hunting them unless it's kind of like in a wildlife management situation. We do
Hmm.
do some hazing of monkeys just to keep them out of crops and things like that. We do have squirrels here, but not in the numbers that you would see, I think, in a lot of other parts of the world. So there isn't a lot of treeing going on.
Hmm. Okay, so now I distracted you from where you were going. We were talking about the sort of the makeup of the dogs, their personality and their build or
Right.
temperament. So I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
shouldn't have said that. Go ahead.
No, no. It's we're gonna go somewhere else now. I was gonna go into other than size and color and things. If we're talking temperament, obviously being one land race, they can seem quite similar. But if you get into the breeds and you're actually owning them, you do start to see those little differences that we have. So with the Akita, for instance, now, and it's much more of a show dog, you're looking at a much lower energy dog, and we'll just remove that from the conversation because we're kind of talking hunting dogs today. The Shiba Inu being the smallest, I would liken it a little bit to a kind of a terrier type personality where they've got a lot more energy. They're quite an independent thinker. The Japanese breeds, that can be said for most of the Japanese breeds. They're very intelligent, independent thinkers. They haven't been selected to try and, I think, be super trainable or be looking for a lot of input from their owner or handler. So we kind of expect them to hunt, like you said earlier, alluded to a bit about hunting very naturally. Their structure and build is a very natural kind of a wild canid type structure, and part of what I said earlier with their survival instincts and fight or flight and all this. That's very much a primitive breed. I think they've got a lot of that. They retain a lot of that, and so that comes into their personality and how trainable they are. I think that a lot of people that have tried to use them for hunting or different tasks realize that well, some people can get frustrated right off the bat, and they're like, it doesn't work like my retriever does, or
Hmm.
my hound does. They're trained very differently. They create great bonds, and they're very famous for this. They create great bonds with their owner. So if you have a really good trust, kind of a relationship with them, they'll actually want to work for you, but not because you've bribed them or forced them to do it. It's kind of like there's a lot of reasoning going on. I think someone put it pretty well. I think they said that a lot of the modern breeds we have today were kind of they weren't dumbed down, but they we removed a lot of the parts of their intellect that was unnecessary to us. We didn't want a bird dog that was thinking, maybe I'll go hunt the deer today or something like this. We just removed that part, or that was baying
Hmm.
on tractor. We just removed that. But the Japanese breeds, because they've got a lot of that intact, they're it's like the difference between a 2 or 3 year old child and like an 8 or 9 year old child. They have that kind of intellect going on, so you need to be able to reason with them and get in their mind, and if they figure it out, they just get better and better as they age, because with more experience, and this can be said probably of any hunting dog, but with more experience they just get better and better, and it's just a joy to own them and watch them hunt and run.
Hmm. Probably, it sounds like there's a particular development in these dogs because they are reasoning and developing. You talk about them. You describe them as primitive hunting dogs, and that they go through the complete hunting cycle. Could you
Yeah.
describe what you mean by that?
Okay, so I think with certain breeds, we've removed certain parts of the whole hunting cycle. Like we'll have a wild canid out on the hunt, and they're hunting. They're going through the search, and then they're picking up scent, and then they're going on track, and then they're finding and actually making contact with the animal, running the animal down, stopping it, and then with the final act being the actual, subduing of the prey. The Japanese breeds actually have all those steps still in their DNA. So, given a chance, they will go all the way to actually taking down prey on their own. But that being said, obviously there are other breeds that can do that. But that being said, they also have this great survival instinct that will stop them from being too ridiculously greedy when it comes to dangerous game.
Mm,
And just because of the nature of the terrain and things here, like I said earlier with deer, most of the Japanese breeds just I probably anatomically are not going to be fast enough to be able to stop and catch deer here. And
mm,
because they're not hardwired to run them down to exhaustion like maybe a wild canid would, we don't have an issue where dogs are or probably what you would consider unethically hunting deer, where they just run them till they drop, because the
mm,
Japanese breeds will stop before that and come back.
mm. Yeah. So maybe one example of the refinement from primitive to specialized is I've heard about guys with sight hounds who they might have excellent dogs which catch rabbits, you know, I don't know, lurchers, greyhounds, salukis, which catch rabbits, but have soft mouths and won't kill the rabbit. And I think my understanding is a primitive, primitive dog is the whole package in that it's not specialized to a degree where I think in hounds, I've got a bulldog. You've really bred out their preservation instinct. They're not natural creatures. They're not wild creatures in that wild creatures don't go into crazy situations and get themselves killed. And I think something that's appealing about these Japanese dogs is they're reasoning their odds in a way that are highly specialized bred dog. Not to say these aren't bred because you've got exacting breeding standards, which I'd like to talk about, but just in a way that these more independent, what we're calling primitive dogs, they won't do.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summation of it. Is that yeah, you can have a very specialized breed, say, for instance, yeah, like you're saying, a catch breed that's just going to go in there and catch. Whereas a like a my Kishu male that was actually quite a famous hunting dog here in Japan. When I would hunt him, he would for wild boar he'd catch everything, probably up to like a 40 some kilos on his own. But anytime it was a more dangerous boar or something, he would switch to baying. And then if the boar tries to run, he did learn later on to go in and like catch the back leg and go for the Achilles a bit and things like that to stop the boar, make it turn around. And but then people would ask me if he's a if he's a bay dog or a catch dog, and he does both. And they're really figuring out. And then later on, he actually learned how to run boar around to where he'd actually push them back to me, or if there was a whole herd coming, he'd actually lure them out so where I could actually get a shot on like a whole herd of boar that were actually chasing the
Mm-hmm.
dog to me.
Mm-hmm.
So they learn these little tricks like this, which is actually quite interesting to see when you're hunting with them.
Yeah, I think it's on when you hunt with fewer dogs, you're better able to observe their developments and I think participate in their development in a way where when you turn a mob of dogs loose, they might be doing things and you have no idea because there's too many. You said a Nihon Ken that doesn't hunt is not a true Nihon Ken, and I like that understanding of them as you know essentially a working dog, and that they lose some portion of their of their essence when they lose their function. And I think that there is something sad about any dog breed, really, but particularly the ones that are closer to their working roots when they lose their function. So why is it so vital to the nature of the Nihon Ken that it be a working dog?
Yeah, I mean that is a difficult question. I do get asked that a lot, and I've had to think about it a lot recently, especially as we've been struggling with how to preserve them moving forward. There are people that have the idea that we should dumb them down a bit. We should breed them to be better companion dogs or more of a pet breed because they're beautiful dogs and people will want them.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that when we're looking at it, these are actually, these are parts of a cultural heritage that we have, and we could sit there and argue about whether these things need to be preserved. But they are actually really important to keeping in a larger scale. If we think about artisanal crafts, things that we have a lot of in Japan, a lot of tradition, a lot of culture. These are things that are part of our national identity. And as we've seen with a lot of cultures that have just disappeared all over the world, once they're gone, once we've forgotten how to do them, once we've lost the genetic material, that we don't come back from that. We might be able to make something similar or something else, but we've lost it as mankind has lost it. Um, and so there's something sad about that. And I think I don't think we can say it's right or wrong to lose it. It can be better to hold on to as much, say, genetic material knowledge as we can in here in Japan. That's what we are trying to do. Um, but if we go back to how this ties in with preserving them as a hunting breed and not just a pet, dog breed, just like some other breed, a companion dog. These it is their soul. It's actually written into the standard that we have here that they are a hunting breed, and we're supposed to be preserving a functional hunting breed. And I think probably the clearest answer I could give is the whole reason why I started hunting with these dogs in the first place is when I went to go get my hunting license, and I got my firearm and I was looking into what kind of a hunting dog would hunt best in Japan. And essentially, these breeds, these six Japanese breeds, the Nihon Ken, have evolved with the Japanese people and have been selected by the environment to hunt here in Japan. They are the perfect hunting animal for the terrain here in this country.
Hmm.
Other breeds can do parts of the job, maybe little bits of it better. But as far as an old rounder, even down to their size, there was actually a friend of mine who's a hunter and a veterinarian, and he did a study trying to figure out what the best hunting size, and so he measured it by weight for the mountains here in Japan was, and essentially he found out that anything under 12 kilograms for this mountainous terrain, if it was under 12 kilograms, the dogs were too small. They couldn't keep up with the large game that we were trying to hunt.
Hmm.
Any dog that went over, I think it was 24 to 26 kilograms, basically lost energy by having to carry its weight up and down these mountains. So our sweet spot was essentially what the Japanese Nihonken has evolved into, which is that 12 kilogram to 24, 26 kilogram little niche there that is perfect for hunting here. So that is the biggest argument I can give for preserving these breeds as hunting breeds is that they're selected to hunt here in Japan. And then from an emotional viewpoint, it's part of our cultural heritage. It keeps these traditional crafts, knowledge. They keep rural communities together. It's part of our hunting culture. It's the fabric of who we are. And then seeing these beautiful dogs, just from an aesthetic viewpoint, it's an amazing thing to see. They're beautiful dogs. It's great to see them working. And yeah, I do often say because this is something that was told to me when I got into the Nihonken that a Nihonken that doesn't hunt, and this is by a famous a judge in the Japanese Dog Preservation Society, which is called Nippo. He said to me, "A Nihonken that doesn't hunt is not a true Nihonken." And I thought long and hard about that. It is, but it basically it speaks to the way the standards here are written, in that the essence of the dog, the soul of the dog, is so important. Um, it's a massive part of the standard, the character of a dog, because they wrote into the standard what was considered the ideal character and temperament of an ideal hunting dog. And if we lose that, we've essentially lost the breed. It's lost its soul, and the breed just becomes a shell of itself. It becomes this pretty thing. It could be anything, but it essentially just becomes a dog and not a Nihon Ken anymore.
Yeah, it becomes a Labrador with a different outfit on, and we don't need that. Yeah, I think there's something paradoxical about the dogs in that they are both primitive and highly refined at the same time in a way that is it's hard to describe, but I think you get a feel for when you look at pictures and videos of them. Uh, it's for people who are into dogs and breeding dogs, the essential nature of genetics and the idea that this dog could have evolved through natural and human selection over thousands of years to be perfectly suited to its environment. That's a completely natural idea, and and we all understand it. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. We love to see the genetics of a dog play out, and a dog that perfectly suits its role. Could you describe the country, the landscape that you're in, and how, so we can understand how that shaped the hunting dogs and how it shapes you?
Okay, yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, 75% of Japan is mountainous. We're an island chain of over, I think it was about 14,000 islands or something like that. And it's a volcanic island landscape. It's tough terrain. It's steep up and down. I've had hunters come over from Europe and the US and hunt with me in this kind of traditional style that we call a nagashiro, which is walking through the mountains. And it's essentially it's this terrain in these mountains that shaped the Nihonken as we have it today. Everything from their size, that optimal hunting weight for hunting mountainous terrain. And I think it's very similar to what I've seen in like New Zealand. They have a lot of the similar kind of very mountainous, very jungly, because we are a very humid, temperate kind of a climate here for most of Japan. It's a very similar type of dog that we need. But then we also have like the islands of Shikoku, where the Shikoku Ken is from, and those are much higher mountains. So we do have some higher, more alpine kind of a landscape as well. But because of the nature of the climate too, where we have full 4 seasons, we have hot, humid heat in summers. We have very cold winters for through a lot of Japan. So we needed breeds that would be able to deal with these shifts in climate. So we don't have any short-haired breeds here in Japan. They are all double-coated, fairly. I wouldn't say they're long coats. We don't have very long coats. They're kind of a medium-length coat, but double-coated, which they shed out during the hot summer months. This so they're really well suited to dealing with the summer, the heat in the summer, and the cold in the winter. They can handle both. Um, I guess that's how they've been shaped by the environment, by our climate, by our terrain, and also even down to say their temperament, like their hunting style, which I haven't talked too much about, but they hunt very close. They're very hot-nosed breeds, and a large part of that is if you hunt here in Japan, and anyone that's probably hunted in really overgrown kind of jungly terrain could probably tell you that if a dog or anything gets out of I guess 30, 50 yards of you, you're not going to see it.
Mm.
That dog's going to be gone. So in hunting with the Japanese breeds, they're generally searching, or I guess questing, within about 100 meters of where I'm at. And constantly they hit that 100-meter mark, and then they'll double back, come see which direction I'm going, and then redirect towards the direction that I'm moving in. They do that
Mhm.
naturally. You don't need to teach them to do that. They'll just do it because they have that bond with their handler owner. So they'll do that. And a large part of that, I think, was also part of the selection in for hunting this terrain. A dog that was going to run out for 3 days on you and go after something would not work for a Matagi hunter here in Japan. So it's definitely shaped their temperament and their hunting style as well.
Mhm.
And then going into, I guess, your question about how that's shaped myself as a hunter, I would say that it definitely keeps you fit and in shape. We're
Mhm.
doing even if we're not doing a lot of backcountry, because I would say most of the hunting here is actually I can walk out my door and be hunting basically because the boar come right up to my fence line, and I live in a very rural area.
Mhm.
But it's very similar to I think what a lot of the backcountry hunters and stuff do, which is when I'm going out hunting, you kind of need to be self sufficient. You're carrying all your gear, everything you're going to need. I'm carrying it myself because I'm hunting alone, generally solo. And then you got to be fit. These ups and downs. That's a lot of really hardcore cardio. I've had gentlemen from the U.S. and Canada and Europe, like I said, come hunt with me, and I was afraid some of them were going to drop from a heart attack. They were like, "Where's the ATV? Where's the truck?" I'm like, "No, we're walking." And if you get something, you're carrying it out, and that to me
Yeah.
is it's a very natural style of hunting. It's a
Yeah.
very old school style of hunting for
Yeah.
sure.
There's different types of hunters out here. I promise you, we're not all ATV hunters.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I've met some of them. I've met some, and some are pretty hardcore and can walk me into the ground, and then I'm
yeah.
impressed. I'm like, oh, you got it.
Yeah. Then we got some real fat asses, but oh well.